So, before we start with the session, let me ask you to think about one conversation that you're really avoiding right now. Not in general, a conversation about a specific person, a specific situation. You already know what needs to be said, right? But you are not saying it. Some of you have been carrying this for a few days. Maybe some of you are carrying it for a few weeks. And if you're honest, you've already had this conversation in your head multiple times, right? You have probably replayed it. You have probably rewritten it and also improved it, but you have just not had it. How many of you are with me? Yes, thank you. Now, I want to bring your attention to a lie that most of the professionals believe. Most managers and senior professionals think that they struggle with a difficult conversation because they don't know what to say. That is the lie. If some of you don't manage people here, that is fine. You've already avoided a conversation with a peer or a skip level or a founder or any cross-functional partner for that matter, right? Same pattern, same cost. Because if I ask you right now, what exactly is not working, you can tell me, right? In one sentence. Okay. Now you think that you need a playbook, a structure, the right words, the perfect tone. But the real problem is not what to say. It is whether you are willing to say it. And behind that unwillingness is usually one fear. Not what if I say it wrong, but what if they see me differently after I say it? For how many of you was this a bulb on moment? Yes? Okay. So I'll tell you a story, right? So a manager who I coached, who I worked with, had someone on their team, a good person, right? No attitude issues, no conflict, but the work wasn't there. They had missed deadlines and a lot of incomplete work. Even if the work was done, it needed rework, and so on and so forth, right? Now, this particular manager, he had some conversations with this particular employee. In fact, three conversations were had with that particular employee, but none of them were real. What did he say? He said, no, let's try to improve this. Be a bit more careful. We need to tighten things up, right? Uh, and what happened with the employee? The employee just left the conversation thinking, oh, I handled that well, or I'm doing just fine. And what did the manager think? Manager also left the conversation thinking, I handled that well and I'm doing fine. That is the paradox of not saying it. Because politeness is not clarity and soft language is not kindness. Well, let's talk about avoidance, right? When you avoid a difficult conversation, something interesting happens. You don't remove the problem. The problem is still there. You just relocate it from their work into your head. And it starts showing up everywhere in your meetings, in reviews, in your tone, right? And this is the part no one says out loud, because it is exhausting. You carry it into your day, into other decisions, sometimes even at home. And by the time most managers finally say something, they are already late, very late. What should have been a simple correction now becomes a heavy conversation because you didn't just delay the conversation, right? You also increased its inherent weight. And the person you were trying to protect, they don't know what you know, right? They're going home thinking they're doing okay. And you have made sure of that, right? So the ownership is with you. Let's take few scenarios here, guys, just to make it more realistic and more clearer. Okay? So let's go back to the original story, right? The one that I was talking about, this manager who had this particular employee. Now, something similar might be happening with you as well. So try and imagine yourself in that manager's shoes and then move ahead. Work is slipping. Think that work is slipping. You have hinted, you have softened, right? So what do you say now, right? You can probably just go ahead and say that we need to improve quality going forward because you think it is reasonable, you think it is professional, but nothing really changes. Why? Because you didn't say what is wrong, right? Your last three deliverables missed key requirements. This is what you should have articulated very, very clearly, but you don't. This is impacting the team. This is also what you should have told them, but you don't. So, if you cannot explain the problem in one clear sentence, you're not ready to have the conversation. So, do you have that clarity? Here comes another valuable insight for you guys. So, clarity feels harsh, but only when you're not used to hearing it, right? Think about it. Just imagine some of these conversations that you've had or you've not had, and imagine what clarity might have brought to those conversations. Think of your own situation. One sentence. What is actually not working? Say it to yourself right now. Don't share it with me. Keep it anonymous. Don't share it on the chat. Feel free if you wish, but yeah, I would say just jot it down, journal in one of your journals, and then reflect on it later, right? Now, let's take the same scenario ahead. Now, let's say you have shared what needed to be shared with this employee, and let's see what happens when the employee actually comes back with a lot of emotions, because this is something that breaks most of the managers. You know, they come back at you and they say that, I've been trying very hard, but I'm exhausted. Seems nothing is working, because nothing feels good enough for you. So try and think what happens inside you when you hear this, right? You're probably thinking about guilt or doubt, in fact, even major discomfort, right? What happens when you feel this? You typically retreat. You soften the message and you reassure them, or even easy, you change the topic altogether because suddenly this is no longer about performance. It's not about the employee's performance. It is about being a good person. You start wondering if you created this. If your expectations were unclear, if you failed them before they failed you. How many of you feel this way? Yes, thank you. What you should do instead, you should say clearly, yes, I hear you. I hear that you're emotional. And we should talk about that. But we also need to address what is not working, right? Why? Because if you abandon the problem when emotions show up, you teach people that emotions can replace accountability. That is a very, very wrong precedent. Okay. I know this is going to be very, very hard to do it, especially with the lack of uh, you know emotional regulation on our end. It is a big, big topic to cover, but I'm not going into too many details because I cover it in greater details in my cohort, which I conduct for around 10 weeks. It is also customized according to the team's needs, etc. But when I do it for leaders, I do it for 10 weeks. And this is just like 2-3% of what I really cover in the cohort. This is one of the topics, and this is 2 or 3% of that topic. Okay, so I'm not going to go into too many details, but I want still to help you guys understand the basic concepts, the mistakes that we might be doing as managers, and how we can correct them. Okay, and these are really, really important. Let's move on. Let's take the same scenario ahead and see what happens after this. Let's say you have regulated the emotions and you have handled it carefully, and you have crafted a good response. But now, you've in fact you've tried supporting them, you've tried coaching them, but they come and now say you have not supported me, that this is unfair. Sometimes it can go even further. They can say that they don't trust you and that you don't trust them. So now what do you do? Think. This is where most managers just start defending themselves. Please try to put yourself into such managers' shoes. I'm sure some of you must have gone through this. You may or may not have handled it correctly, but just try and imagine. Would you also start defending yourself because the person is actually blaming you for not supporting and coaching them? You probably end up explaining everything that you have done, and you end up trying to prove that you are fair. What happens? The conversation just collapses, right? You must have experienced it. If not, you might experience it. I want you to be very, very clear and ready with these behavioral traits and how you can manage it. So here is what you should do instead of doing all of this, defending yourself, trying to prove yourself. You should just clearly state that here is what we have tried, right? No over explanation. You should also state here is what is still not working, right? I'll repeat. Here is what we have tried. Here is what is still not working. And here is what needs to change, right? So you're not just bringing the history. You're also not just complaining about what is not working. You're also helping them understand with clarity that what needs to change. Don't be that manager who, just comes with problems, who's probably just picky, who's not supportive. Try and be that manager who comes with what exactly needs to change. Don't be vague. One thing to consider here, there is a possibility that sometimes your employees are also not entirely wrong. Maybe the feedback actually went out late. Maybe you could have been clearer, more specific earlier. You can acknowledge that, once in a while, but briefly, without letting it derail the accountability and the conversation, right? You can just clearly say that you're right, that I could have flagged this sooner. That is on me. And it doesn't change what is in front of us now. Okay. In just these two simple statements, you have articulated the accountability very, very clearly, right? You have moved the needle in the correct direction where progress can be made. It is not about blaming anybody. It is not about getting too emotional about things. Yes, you're empathizing. Please don't, be that person who is apathetic, who has apathy towards their employees. Try and be as empathetic as possible. Again, as I mentioned, I can go into more details into this in my cohort or in the program if you guys feel like joining it. But for now, just it suffices to explain that you shouldn't be over justifying things. You should not be rejecting the thoughts. The intention is not to make the discussion about you. More importantly, it is still about them, right? So keep it that way. Just help them understand what needs to be done and why. Okay? So, in such cases, clarity feels harsh only after a long period of ambiguity. How many of you have been there where your manager probably told you that you needed to work on things, you are not proactive enough? The proactive word is so popular in the feedback or in the performance reviews. The people have gotten frustrated of this word proactive. It has lost its significance. This is what leads to ambiguity. So please don't imitate what has happened with you. Don't let your teams suffer because of this ambiguity. Please try and be as specific as possible and be as mindful as possible. Okay. Now, let's go ahead and take this further. But there are some cases, right, where that there is only one outcome, that the employees are not going to make it. But this is a very, very difficult conversations, and every manager I know fears it the most, like literally fears it the most. In fact, even the seasoned HR managers fear it because this is the real test of your character, of your conversation techniques, of how good you can manage and regulate your emotions. You can still be helpful, kind, and still be direct, right? But in reality, no matter how prepared you are in such discussions, you always end up talking more. And you know what I'm talking about, right? This is the discussion where you have to probably let somebody go. This is where every leader, every manager gets over chatty. They just try to justify things left, right, and center. They try to make it seem easier, but it never is. It never can be. It is difficult. So you don't have to explain everything because simply put, it just doesn't work, right? All you can do is clearly, genuinely, and with empathy say that today will be your last day here. HR will walk you through the next steps. If there is anything I can help you with in the exit formalities, please reach out. I'm always here to help you. Simple. That's it. No more, no less. Don't try to sugarcoat it. Don't try to justify anything. Don't try to, overdo it. Because the longer you talk, the more you make it again about you. These discussions are not about you at all. Please be very, very mindful about that. Okay. All right. I hope this helped, guys. Yes. Okay. Thank you. Let's walk forward. This is not the end of the session or the story, right? See, most difficult conversations are not difficult because of the other person. Okay, as we've already established. It is also not about you completely, but They are difficult because of who you believe, who you need to be. You believe you need to be nice, you believe you need to be supportive, and you believe you need to be understanding, right? And you think that clarity threatens all of it. But please know that it doesn't. Clarity does not threaten anything. And avoidance is not kindness. Delay is not support. And silence is definitely not leadership, right? So, who are you protecting when you stay silent? Them or the version of yourself you need to believe in? Please think. Please think through clearly. These discussions are going to be difficult, but before you can imagine what can go wrong, what should be right, what should be said, what words should come out, what should be the structure, please try and think about the identity that is either not allowing you to say or that is letting you say the things in a wrong way. Is it about you trying to be a good person, a nice, supportive, understanding person? Or is it about you who is trying to help actually, genuinely, with empathy? Please make it very, very clear before you say that the conversations are difficult the next time. Now, let me bring your attention back to the conversation you thought about at the start. Now, I'm pretty sure all the emotions are coming back, rushing, probably flooding, and you now know what needs to be said. Well, actually, you knew it before you walked in, didn't you? The only question now is, will you say it? Will you say it after this session? Because right now, that conversation is happening anyway, just not with them. Okay? All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining and for staying with me. I wanted to make sure, if you are in a fix, if you are going through a tough phase in having these difficult conversations, you have somebody who can listen to your problems, me. So, if you want to say anything, feel free to say it to me one on one, because that brings more confidentiality to the discussions and it is also more ethical. I don't want to encourage anybody to share anything right now. Just process your feelings, process your emotions, and reach out to me if you need help. Okay? And I'll share some links with the group later on. And if you're interested in owning these skills and many more, as I mentioned, this is just 2 or 3% of what I cover under this topic of having difficult conversations, negotiation skills, and several other things about how the things should be said, why they should be said, when they should be said, right? And if you are in need of any of these problems, because these are the real pain problems currently, especially in the era of disruption that we are going through. Nobody wants to, add more difficulty on top of what you're already going through, either as a manager or as an employee. So process all the details. Reach out if you need any further clarity or if you have any specific scenarios that you would like to go through me. And I'm happy to brainstorm and share the further guidance. Okay. All right. Thank you all. Have a good rest of the evening and have a good weekend. Thank you. Bye bye.